Well, hi there. Welcome to ChessBase Workshop. I'm Steve Lopez, your host. Thank you for coming along for the ride today, clicking on that link and joining us. We're going to look at openings this week. I get questions in the email box occasionally about opening features in ChessBase and Fritz, one of them being opening keys. People have a hard time with the concept of opening keys, and you shouldn't feel bad if you're one of those people. Way back in the day, back in 1992, when I got my first copy of ChessBase 4, I understood the program really well, except for one aspect initially, which was keys. I couldn't figure out what the heck the manual was talking about when it was talking about keys. And then I had an epiphany one day. It just hit me what they meant was indexes. Key is another name for index. It's like when you open up a chess book on the openings, a general repertoire book or whatever, and in the back, last couple pages, they have an index of the openings, and you look up a particular opening, it gives you a page number, you go back, and there on that page, lo and behold, is a game using that opening. Look up, say, the Queen's Gambit declined, it says page 42 and 3 or 4 other pages, you go back to page 42, and there it discusses the Queen's Gambit declined. That's what a key is. A key is an index for a database. Since a database is basically, essentially, a random mishmash of games, how do you find stuff? One of the ways you find it is with opening keys. Let me show you. We're going to go to Mega Database 2010, double click on it, and we get a game list. Let's go over to here to openings. You see a bunch of tabs here across top. There's different ways that you can find games by different categories. We're going to go to openings. That takes us to the opening key. I'm going to scroll up just a second. I want to show you something. First of all, there's 4.5 million games in this database, nearly 4.5. 4 million, etc. But over here is the part I want to show you. This is called Superkey. It's put together in 2004, as you can see, by a fellow named Joachim Zunke. Guy did an outstanding job on this key. I'm very fond of this. This has become the standard ChessBase opening key, and it's great stuff. Different ways you can find games. If you know the ECO code, they're all listed down here. Please notice that it does skip around in alphanumeric order. That is the beauty of this key. ECO, Encyclopedia Chess Openings, where these codes are from, are organized in a somewhat bizarre manner. When you use ECO a bunch, you eventually figure out there is a method to the madness, but it does jump around a little bit. For example, D-pawn openings, games with 1D4 can be found in 3 separate volumes, A, D, and E. And you wonder, why did they not do it as A, B, and C and put the E-pawn and other openings in the other couple of volumes? Man, I don't know. So what Joachim Zunke has done here is put these together in a somewhat more logical order. I'll show you. 1C4 is here. Any opening that starts with 1C4 will appear here or in a subkey. Notice there are a bunch of dots here. Okay. 1C, what that means is look immediately above to the listed opening. So 1C4 would be C4, C6, or C4, E6, or C4, Knight F6, etc. Down here's 1E4, and all these ones followed by dots mean, or if there's a gap here where we go way out over here, all of this block of openings from here to here deal with 1E4 openings, and the same thing with 1D4 scrolling down the rest of the way. Very simple. So let's say we're looking for, let me just pull an opening out of thin air here, the Roy Lopez Schliemann Gambit. I always found that to be a really interesting gambit because it's pretty effective for black in that if white doesn't know what he's doing, you can clock him pretty good. So we're going to look here. I always wind up being on the white side of a Schliemann too. It's really annoying. We got to find it though. That's the trick. So we know it's a 1E4 opening. 1E4, 1E5. Well, we don't see the Roy Lopez listed, but if you look here, it says 1E4. Then it says 1E5. So we know it's an open game. So how do we get to those games? There are about 500,000, a little over 500,000 games in this database. Well, here's the trick. This works very much like Windows Explorer. If you've ever gone file hunting in Windows Explorer, you know that to unzip a folder, to see what's inside that folder, you click on a little bitty plus sign. So we click on plus sign right here. What that'll do, it's going to unzip a bunch of subkeys that are part of this key. Watch carefully. Click on that plus sign. Zing! And there we go. They're all unzipped now. We can click on the minus sign and zip them back up if we want to. Click on that little plus sign, and this drops down, shows you all the subkeys. King's Gambit, King's Knight games, Petrov, and we scroll down here. Here's the Roy Lopez, and lo and behold, the Schliemann is not put in as a sub key. It's put out here right where you can see it, which is neat. It says Schliemann, and we know the opening moves, by the way, are e4, e5, and of course knight f3, which is here, knight c6, which is here. Then we have to scroll down to bishop b5, which is here. And then, of course, the response is f5. That takes us to the Schliemann. And look at this. We have a little plus sign next to Schliemann. So we click on that. And now we have a whole bunch of sub-keys. And we see various things happening here. First of all, we have 4 unusual responses. None of these other moves show up here, with one exception. Castling will show up, because the one castling variation that is given goes the whole way out to move 6. So if we click on that, for example, we will see, because there's no plus signs off to the side here, notice, we see games. This is how we get to the games. What I'm looking for, actually, is this. 4 queen e2, followed by f takes e4, followed by queen e4. That's the exact move order I'm interested in looking at, because of the audacity of moving the queen around so early in the opening. So we'll click on that. Again, notice no little plus sign off the side, so we get games down here. We've drilled down through all these openings as far as we can go. Now we're hitting games. It says there are 49 games that use this particular move order. Well, guess what? If we pull this up, by the way, you can resize these 2 panes by moving the mouse to here, getting your little 2-headed arrow, left-clicking, dragging this upward, letting off the button, and we get a little better look at the games here. If we were to sit here and count them, there would be 49 games here. We're looking at this key. It says there are 49 games. That's what these numbers are off on the right-hand side, the number of games that are part of that key. We can see there are 8,696 Schliemann games, and if we were to add up all of these numbers, plus all the sub-keys, etc., we would come out with that number. Go out here to Queen e4, we see George Marco against Frank Marshall. Double-click on it, and now we can just play through the game. You can use the right cursor key on your keyboard, as I'm doing here, which you can't see. Or you can use the VCR buttons under the board. You know how to play through a game in the database. We don't really need to cover this. What I find interesting about this is this game was a draw. And I find it just, I'm going to have to play through this later when I have some time, because I just cannot believe how Frank Marshall did not punish the audacity of George Marco in playing this queen e2 followed by queen e4. Of course, then we see what happened is the knight comes out and the queen has to go back. This is interesting. So the material is even, but it looks like black's doing a little better on development. So we need to look at some other games. So we look through this game, we can play through it. We have other games down here as well, a whole bunch of them. If you scroll down the list, you'll even find some closer to the present day. Here's one from 2009. Look at that. Just throws that pawn out there and laughs. That's interesting. So this is all kind of cool stuff I need to go back over and play. And that's how I found it, was by using these keys, opening keys. You start out going from the general, working your way down to the specific. As I said before, we were looking for the Schliemann. So we start out with the overall super key. We find 1 e4. Followed by e5. We know it's an open game, so we unzip it. Then we look for knight f3, followed by knight c6. Then we want bishop b5, followed by f5. Click on the little plus sign, and I knew what I was looking for. Queen e2, f takes e4, queen e4, and there are our games. And I've got 49 games to play through to see how black ought to handle the audacity of white in playing this early queen move. That's the basic idea behind opening keys. It's an index. It's an index of all the openings. In the case of Superkey, all the openings, period. Any game ever played can fall under one of these keys within the Superkey. We're going to look at some other aspects of key use next time around, like what do you do if you have a database that doesn't have an opening key and you would like to include one with your database. Well, that's what we're going to look at the next time around at ChessBase Workshop. So until then, have fun.